Phill, thanks for joining me today. So it's Phill here, it's the CEO of TicketSellers and Eventree. Phill, over to you. Introduce us to your business, please.
Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for having me. So, as you said, CEO of TicketSellers and Eventree. TicketSellers pretty much does what it says on the tin. We help people sell tickets to events. And primarily, we work with greenfield festivals. So that's people that go and put on an event in a place where there's not normally an event. So usually a music festival of some kind. And Eventree complements that because Eventree is an event management platform which helps you look after all those people who aren't buying a ticket but are coming to your event in some capacity to work, to perform, to volunteer, to do something at the event. So those two products work really well together and really complement each other.
Great stuff. Thank you. So what would you say makes you different from your competition? What makes you stand out?
Do you know what? I think it's probably what I just said, because there are a lot of ticket agents around. It's a very, very saturated market.
Yeah.
There's everything from what we would call full service ticket agents, which is, where we fit in, which is where you have an account manager. Someone's going to look after you, a lot of hand holding, and they're going to make sure that everything works for you. Through to the self-service platforms. And I suppose the most popular example of that would be something like Eventbrite, where you log in, you create an account, you set up your event yourself, and you kind of manage it all yourself.
Yeah.
And let's be clear, there's no one right answer to this. There are different solutions that work for different people. And we've very much positioned ourselves at the full service end of the scale because we recognize there are lots of very complicated events who just need a little bit more support with their ticketing.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of companies doing this, but there are no other organizations in this space who also have Eventree, which is our event management product. And Eventree just fills a massive gap for our clients. So we've got ticketing where we're selling a ticket. Someone comes up to the event with that ticket, they scan it, they're let into the event. We all understand that model. And that covers about, maybe 80% of the people who are going to be on the event site. The other roughly 20%, sometimes more, sometimes not quite as many, of people that are there to work. Maybe they're in a band, maybe they're an electrician, maybe they put staging up, maybe they're a security guard. There are literally thousands of people at a lot of these events doing really important jobs. And what we found is that you also need a way to manage those people. In an ideal world, they need to come to the event with a ticket or a pass of some kind to identify who they are and the role they're there to do, so they can come on site and they can work in a secure environment. And that's what we offer people. And most of our clients work with us because they get the two. It's kind of two for the price of one, I guess, is one way to look at it. But to think about it another way is they get all of that service provided by one organization. So they haven't got to go and find another piece of software to fill the gap that Eventree fills for them. And I think that's what really sets us apart from people.
Great. Makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Very clear. So tell me about the business then. Where is this business going in the next 5 years? What are the aspirations?
Well, do you mind if I tell you where it's been in the past first? And
Please
then
do.
I think that sets the scene for the next few years as well.
Please do.
So it is a company with history. So it wasn't started by me. It was started by two people called Mo Jones and Jimmy Hewson in 1998, when, as I like to remind them, I was still at school. And in 1998, you didn't buy tickets on the internet. In fact, if you bought a ticket at all, it was a physical paper thing. And I don't know if you were the same as me, but if you bought a ticket, as a teenager or in your 20s, at that point, you would go to a shop and buy it. And you would go in there and you'd say, have you got any tickets for so-and-so performing at, wherever it happened to be, Wolverhampton Civic Hall, popular venue. Have you got any tickets for whoever's performing there? And they'd look in their little book, a little file, and they'd go, yeah, I've got a couple of tickets left. And you'd pay, cash for them. You take the ticket and that was it, job done. And that was how the company started. So Jimmy and Mo were promoting their own events, so sort of rave, drum and bass type events. They ran them at university, so the University of Birmingham, sorry, where the company was sort of founded originally, and other venues around Birmingham. And they were selling their own tickets to those events. And then other promoters came along and said, can you sell tickets for us as well? Because if people are coming to the shop to buy a ticket for your event, they might want to come to our event too.
Yep.
So it started there. And of course, the world changed, everything went online. So the guys brought in someone to build a ticketing website, and that's actually where the name TicketSellers came from. So they needed a domain for the website, and that's the one they bought. So the branding became TicketSellers. And it expanded. So the shop actually shut down and became more of a workspace for the team. They opened a second office where the development team was based. And then in September 2014, they moved the whole operation to the jewelry quarter. So it was very much now a tech business, headquartered in the jewelry quarter in a gorgeous office, really lovely old office. And this is kind of where I came onto the scene because November of that year, November 2014, I'd been looking for a new opportunity, something that interested me, and I saw this opportunity advertised with Ticket Sellers. Didn't know anything about the company, went along, met the guys. They said, "Can you help us solve some of the tech problems that we've got?" And I said, I think I can probably do that. And took up the job offer, started working with them. And what we set about doing was just unpicking some of the sort of legacy technology the company had been built on, putting some new architecture in place, a new website, just a better way to sell tickets and so on. And then I noticed after working there for a few months, this product they called it at the time TTS Crew. And I said, what's this all about? And everyone understands ticketing because everyone has bought a ticket to an event.
Yeah.
So you can probably understand exactly what a ticketing business does. But this crew system product, or TTS Crew, was brand new to me. And I had to try and get my head around what it was. And the best way to understand it is it's a product that looks after all the people coming to the event who haven't bought a ticket. So the people that are working in some capacity, they're performing at the event or whatever. And I said, guys, I think we've got an opportunity here with this product. There's nothing like it on the market, and there's certainly no other ticket agents offering it. But it doesn't have a real name, it doesn't have an identity. We don't sell it to anyone. We just give it to people free. And the guy said, yeah, okay, let's give it a go. So we rebranded it as Eventree. And we went along to a trade show in October 2015. So I'd been there just less than a year. And we launched Eventree to the events world. And we said to people, look, you've perhaps heard of it, you've perhaps seen it in use, but here it is, you can actually buy it and use it at your own events. And so from 2015 through to 2020, the use of Eventree grew quite steadily. And then, of course, in February, March of 2020, the world came to a complete stop. And the events industry came to more of a stop than anything else. And I'm sure you remember those times. So not only, every business, I would guess most businesses suffered to an extent, but particularly if you were the type of business where people physically have to go and there are lots of you going, mass gatherings, just a big no-no at that time. And so we saw our income for that year it just plummeted. We were down to a few percent of our normal monthly earnings. And it was a really, really difficult time for the business. And we had to think really hard about what are we going to do? Are we going to survive this? And if we do survive it, what does the world look like? And it was around this time that I actually said to the guys, you know what? I'm going to go and work somewhere else. You can't afford me. We haven't got any money coming in. I think the best thing for the business is if I step away, I'll go and get another job. You can then use the money that you were paying me to help keep the business afloat and we'll get through it. Jimmy and Mo had other ideas and they said, actually, what if we stepped away and what if you took over running the business? And I said, okay, interesting, but we need an end goal. I don't want to just be doing this for 20 years. I want to make sure we've got a plan. We said, how about what if that plan is in the next 3 to 5 years, we achieve an exit of some sort, whether that's a sale, a merger, whether there's some investment, we have a milestone and we'll aim to reach it in that time period. So that was the goal that we set ourselves. And then if you fast forward a little bit more to the summer of 2021, events started happening again. You might remember Boris Johnson announced that we could all attend events again from June. It got pushed back a couple of weeks, but to most of the events were able to happen. There were some of the larger ones. You might remember that Glastonbury didn't happen in the summer of 2021. Some of the bigger ones felt it was just there wasn't enough time to get everything up in place and up and running in time. Yeah. But certainly a lot of events did happen. And this is where it got really interesting for us because all these events that wanted to happen, they couldn't just, they needed a way to systematically manage the people working at the event. They needed to be able to prove they knew who everyone on site was, whether those people exhibited any symptoms of COVID, whether they'd taken lateral flow tests and so on. And people started not literally knocking on the door, but virtually knocking on the door and said to us, have you got a system that can help with this? And we said, actually, funnily enough, we have. Have you heard of Eventree? And they said, oh, yeah, I have heard of that. But, we've always just managed this with spreadsheets and things. We've never really needed a system. And they did need a system all of a sudden. They were sort of forced into a world where you need to properly systemize what we call accreditation. which is the process of making sure you know who all these people are, they've got the right level of access to the event and so on. So we very quickly built a module to handle health checks and lateral flow tests and so on.
Yeah.
And we actually deployed it at more events in that one summer than we had each of the previous years running up to this point. And it's just snowballed from there, because as soon as people saw the benefits of having a proper system and processes in place for managing their staff and their performers, their contractors, their suppliers, their the partners or sponsors, as they might be called, they suddenly realized the benefits of this. And they latch onto this. And so actually we can save money, we can do things faster, we don't make as many mistakes doing it this way. And we haven't looked back from that summer of 2021. And every year since then, we've taken on more and more clients who've come to us because they see the value of using Eventree to run their events.
Brilliant.
So that gets us to where we are now.
Yeah.
Also, we need to probably just circle back a little bit to this goal that we had of reaching some sort of exit. So about a year or so ago, we started looking around thinking, okay, we've got a lot of clients using Eventree, we've got a lot of ticketing clients on the ticket seller side. This could be a business someone's interested in buying. And we put dipped our toe in the water. We put some feelers out, as they say, just to see if anyone was interested. We had a little bit of a response, and we kind of got an idea of the sort of numbers we might be talking about. And then another company approached us, an organization called Citizen Ticket. And so they're headquartered in Edinburgh, got a London office as well. And they were very interested in a few things: in acquiring a business that was based in the Midlands. So we ticked that box. In acquiring a business that has what we refer to as SaaS revenue, so software as a service revenue.
Mhm.
And again, if I can just explain sort of the difference without hopefully boring you or anyone else, ticketing revenue is very much tied to the number of tickets you sell. So a ticket agent makes money from the booking fees. If you sell more tickets to an event, you make more money. If the event doesn't sell very well, you make less money. So it can be quite volatile. And we saw that during the pandemic. No sales, no revenue. But Eventree, as a piece of software, is a much sort of cleaner and less volatile source of income. So someone comes along and says, I want to use Eventree at my event, and we agree a price with them, they pay, and that's it. That's the sort of financial interaction. And we now have some guaranteed money that's come into the business. And Citizen Ticket liked that model. They were looking to acquire something that had that same sort of model. And then the third box they needed to tick was a business that was operating in a slightly different space to them. And because we'd very much focused on greenfield festivals, they were looking at that and going, yeah, actually, we don't have a huge amount of business there. So it's a good way to expand into that sector.
Mhm.
So they'd approached us and they said, would you be interested? We said, well, funnily enough, your timing couldn't be better. We are actually potentially interested. 11 months later, after 11 months of negotiations and discussions, and I can't even begin to tell you how many different pieces of paper I looked at, we signed an agreement that they would buy the company in its entirety, and we would basically merge the teams together, and we would go out to the market with this much bigger team with a bigger product offering, and we would take it from there. So when we talk about aspirations for the next 5 years, our plan really is to double down on that merger now, and to say to people, look, we've got a brand new ticketing platform in the shape of the Citizen Ticket platform. It does a lot of things the Ticket Sellers platform doesn't do. It's a little bit different. So we'd like you to have a look at that. And to Citizen Ticket clients, look, we've got Eventree now. We've got this great piece of software that you could use to manage the event.
Mhm.
And also looking internationally as well. So we've got a couple of clients now out in Australia. We've got a client out in the States as well. And we're just starting to make inroads into other territories. And that's really where we're looking to go in the next 5 years, to grow the business, to try and sort of tidy up those revenue streams. We've got a lot of people paying for the SaaS side of things, where it's just sort of guaranteed money up front and not quite as volatile as ticket sales, while still maintaining that side of the business as well. And yeah, that's what we're attempting to achieve now as a new management team.
Very cool. Great journey.
Well, there you go. You asked a short question, you got a very long answer, but I hope that's the sort of thing you were looking for.
Brilliant, thanks. So Phill, what would you say your biggest learnings have been since you've been sitting at the helm?
So there's a couple that I'd like to highlight. The first is how much of your focus has to be on your staff, on your people in the business. And I've been a big advocate for well-being and getting a good life balance, a good mix between what we're asking people to do for work and then how they're able to sort of relax and switch off outside of work.
Yeah.
For example, for the last couple of years, in our off season, which is typically October through to March, we've worked a 4-day week. We didn't reduce anyone's pay. We paid normal salary, but for 6 months of the year, people do 4 days instead of five.
Mhm.
And it's a nice way to give back to people because we kind of recognize in the summer, we're going to put a lot of demand on people because the summer for us is a really busy time of year. Lots of events take place, and those events need support. So what can we do to balance that? Well, in the quieter months, we can give people a lot more time to go and do things for themselves. So a big focus on people, never kind of forgetting that they really are your business. They're at the heart of your business. And those people are representing your business when they talk to your customers, your clients, and so on. So that was one that was really important for me. And the second one I wanted to highlight, just going back to what I just said to you about how the pandemic, it was both good and bad. It could have shut the business down completely, but actually going back into a world post-pandemic where people had to get a little bit more organized in terms of how they manage certain aspects of the event, just paid dividends for us, quite literally, I suppose, in a sense. And I think that's the thing that I'd like to highlight, that there's always an opportunity. And even when you're in a situation that you think this is the end, there's no way we can survive this,
Yeah.
there will be an opportunity. You've just got to try and find it and try and work with it. And I guess that's it, isn't it? Don't work against the circumstances, but try and go with those circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely agree. What about the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome?
We
You
should
may
probably,
already have alluded to it, I suppose, but I don't want to make any assumptions.
um, I mean, what can you say? An events industry and a pandemic just do not go well together. Um, you know, that was difficult. It was difficult for a lot of people, and I don't want to sort of suggest that we had it any more difficult than anyone else. But for example, we had to make some very difficult decisions quite early on. A good example, a concrete example of this is we made a few people redundant because we just felt we're not going to survive this financially with a full headcount. We're going to have to bring our team, our headcount right down to the bare minimum, really. We did that, and I think within a few weeks of that happening, the furlough scheme got announced. And you just think in hindsight, would we have done things differently? If that had been in place from day one, if we'd have gone into lockdown as a country, knowing that these financial support mechanisms were in place, would we have done things differently? I think we probably would have done. I think we'd have said, you know what, we could furlough some of these people instead of making them redundant, and we could, see where we get to with that, which would have been more comfortable for them, um, easier for us, perhaps as well. That's just one example, but that's the benefit of hindsight, isn't it? And I think that was the biggest challenge for us. Almost every day, we had to. This is the way you have to remember it was for us, that we had to keep running as a business because we had to refund millions of pounds of payments to customers who all of a sudden wanted the money back for events that weren't going ahead. So we had to still operate as a business, but at the same time, we had no money coming in because no one's paying you to do those refunds.
Mm.
And that I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've had almost more work of a new sort that we've never done before, whilst being faced with almost no money to get it done with. So we really were relying on cash reserves, and then ultimately there was some there's the furlough scheme, and there was the cultural recovery funds. There were sources we could tap into, and I'm sure the government worked as fast as it could to get those in place. But I'm sure everyone would agree with me in saying if they'd been in place from day one, I think we would have had a lot more certainty, and we could have made decisions a little bit differently.
Yeah, would agree with that. So, with the benefit of hindsight, if you're having a conversation with your 18-year-old self, what would you say?
Um, uh, Going back to the age of 18, and even a little bit beyond that, I would say take risks because at this point in your life, you can do it. You haven't got the dependence that you have as you perhaps have children or you get into maybe a long-term relationship or buy a house, those sort of commitments that you have.
Yeah.
And at the age of 18, you don't realize at the time that you can literally go and try anything. And I think the closest I got to that when I was 23, I set up a business and I ran it for 2 years and I sold it. And even then, I think we bought our first house. So my wife was sort of the breadwinner, I suppose, while I was trying to make this business work. But we didn't have any children. The commitments were a little bit less than they are now. If I went back, 5 years earlier to the age of 18, how much easier would even that have been? It wasn't. I was lucky enough to have someone supporting me. But at the age of 18, I think if I'd have had that opportunity then, it would have been less stressful. It would have been easier to do that. So that's the big one for me. The problem is at the age of 18, you often don't know what you want to do. But again, I would say you've got the chance to try lots of different things.
Yeah.
Because if it does go wrong, you'll never have a better safety net than the one that you'll have at that point. You'll never have fewer responsibilities than you will at the age of 18.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. Great. Thank you. If you had to isolate one piece of advice to give to the other business owners watching this, what would it be?
I think it very much depends what stage your business is at. But one that worked really well for us, we've never been a big business. I think there's going to be a context around this first of all, and there'll be companies here that perhaps that listen to this that service many more clients than we do. But our business has never had more than 50 members of staff, just to kind of paint a picture there. And what we've done very well, I think, and what's allowed us to reach this acquisition point and success beyond, hopefully, is that we've been very focused in terms of the clients that we want to take on, the clients we want to service, the type of service that we give them. So if you think about a business our size, it can only service a number of event organizers, clients, and so on. And if we just spread ourselves very thinly, a few theatres, a few sporting events, a couple of festivals, some nightclubs, you don't really get a reputation for yourself in any particular sector. You're just one of 100 different suppliers in that space. But what we did instead is we said, you know what, we are going to capture a good portion of the Greenfield Festival market. We're going to do that really, really well. And that meant that every decision we had to make, do we build this feature or this feature? Do we invest in this hardware or this hardware? Was done with that goal in mind. Is it going to benefit those clients? And by doing that, we got a reputation for ourselves, got a name for ourselves in that space. And then that, of course, helped us grow even more.
Yeah.
And I remember standing at a conference for festivals a few years ago, and someone came up to me from a different company and he said, "You guys have really got the independent festival market sewn up, haven't you?" And I said, "Yeah, thank you for noticing," because that was the payoff, that people were noticing that we had focused on that space. So, that's my very focused bit of advice, is to be very focused. And once you've achieved success in that space, you can start to look beyond it and think, well, can we replicate that? Either the same sorts of clients in a different country, perhaps, or maybe it's a different sort of clients where there's maybe a big overlap with the ones we're already working with. So don't spread yourself too thin.
Very cool. Thank you. So the last piece, Phill, thank you for your words of wisdom, your insights. Thanks for sharing your journey with us. If people want to find out more, how do they go about it?
So the best way now to go about it will be to go to citizenticket.com. That's the new group website. And so you can find out what we're offering as a business. You can get in touch with us. The other thing is you can look me up personally on LinkedIn. So it's just Phill Hayes. I think I'm still down as working for Ticket Sellers on there. So you can go and find me on there. I'm always open to a conversation. It doesn't need to be a sales opportunity for us. It doesn't need to be anything in it. For me, for the business, I just enjoy talking to people.
Great. Brilliant. Hence the reason that below this video, there's a website that doesn't say the Ticket Sellers. So citizenticket.com. That's the reason for the link sitting below this video. Brilliant. Phill, once again, thank you for sharing your journey and your insights. Much appreciated. And obviously, the best of luck with the next stage of the journey.
Well, thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for having me. And yeah, thanks for your best wishes for the future.
Great to meet you. Cheers.
Cheers.